Kristina, you are a co-host, so you can speak at any time. How are you? Thank you so much for coming out, and thank you so much for running for Secretary of State. The state needs you now more than ever, and the voters need to understand these proposals. Listening to you talk, I'm so impressed with you and how passionate you are about helping the state. And I'm so honored that I have an opportunity, and Rick and I, to get you out to people that are familiar with us. They know us, they trust us, and we want to pass that trust right on to you. So if you can go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about what you're facing in your race and what you intend to do, and all about these proposals that people need to understand.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for the work that you and Rick are doing to protect our Second Amendment rights, because that is essential for our liberty. And another piece of our liberty that we need to protect is our voting rights. And when we hear a lot of people talk about voting rights, they use it in a way to be deceptive, because our voting rights are about ensuring that we have access to the ballot, that the ballot is secure, and that illegal ballots are not being cast. And then to put it in context with you guys, since you guys are fighting for our gun rights, oftentimes people try to just relegate it to me being able to hunt. No, it's about me protecting myself and my community from aspiring tyrants. And our voting rights are not just ballot access. It's about making sure that when I vote, my ballot is being handled securely. So many people vote absentee, and that is their constitutional right to vote absentee. But we want to ensure that their absentee ballot is being protected every step of the way, to prevent scenarios like we saw in Wayne County after the 2022 election this past August, where in the city of Ector, during the Wayne County canvass, they discovered a bag of absentee ballots that had not been tabulated. So those voters' right to vote is denied. So yeah, they were able to mark the ballot, but ballot security was not being protected. So therefore, their voting rights are denied. And then also we need to prevent illegal ballots from being cast. And anytime an illegal ballot is cast, it nullifies a legal vote. So the best analogy I use to explain this is like, I play basketball. I'm a big sports person. And if you're playing basketball and every time your team scores a point, the ref gives the other team a point, it nullifies your point. So you can score 1,000 points and it won't make a difference, because every time you make a point, the ref gives the team another point and the other team a point. And so I know that's a very simple explanation, but that's a very easy to understand explanation. And I utilize it because oftentimes trying to understand our election system is very difficult for the average person. And it's not because the average person isn't intelligent. It's just that all of us, we are experts in our gifts and talents. So I'm not an expert marksman. I'm just not, so every person has their unique gift and talent. Some people are great at math. Some people are great at music. Some people are great at building things and using your hands and physical manipulation. We all have unique gifts and talents. So I never want people to feel like I'm one of these people, like I'm the expert. You're not. That's not what's going on. What I am pointing out is that our elections are overly complicated, and there are so many unnecessary layers, so many unnecessary contractors that create failure points and give opportunity for corruption. So speaking specifically about Proposal 2 and why it's such a problem, and I feel that because people are so focused on other things and Proposal 3 being just so outrageous, that Proposal 2 has just been quietly going by and people haven't been paying attention. And Proposal 2 is just as dangerous because it erodes at our ability to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. How? When you look at the Declaration of Independence, it states that governments instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So we, the people, give our consent to have people govern over us. They do not get the just unilateral ability to rule over me. No, you don't. You don't get that right to just rule over me. I get my rights from God, and I choose to put you in a position of power to make decisions that will protect my God-given liberties. That is how our system of government works. Because as we know, history has taught us that people have a tendency to want to rule over other people. That's been a common struggle of mankind. I don't care where in world history, what ethnicity, what religion, it doesn't matter. There's been this constant struggle of human beings want to rule over other human beings. And that's why protecting our freedoms in America is so critical. And a necessary element of protecting our freedoms is protecting our voting rights. And if we don't have secure and honest, transparent, and accessible elections, we have no freedom. That means that anybody could rise to power, and there's nothing we can do about it. Because remember, we can write elected officials, we can complain, we can protest, we can march. But at the end of the day, the only way we truly make our voices heard is when we vote. So that's why this is such a dire issue. And truth be told, there's been so many issues going on for a long time. But after the last presidential election, so many people began to hyper focus on it like never before, because some of the things were just so egregious. They were just so egregious. And when I talk to clerks around the state, there are just so many issues. I go on and on and on. But let me first start and talk about Prop 2, because I know that's something you guys wanted me to really focus on. With Prop 2, there are lots of issues. One is that they want to do away with ID requirements. That when you go to vote in person, you are legally obligated to provide an ID. However, if you do not have an ID, and say you go to the polls and you go, oh, I don't have an ID, then what happens is that you fill out the affidavit of identity, and then their ballot goes through provisional ballot process. They want to remove the ID requirement, saying that constitutionally you don't have to show an ID. So I can say, I don't want to show you my ID. Why is that a problem? I could go and vote in another person's name. If I don't have to provide a picture ID, it's not as though they have a picture ID on file when you go and vote. So a lot of people push back on the ID requirement, stating that, oh, well, a lot of people don't have an ID. 2 points I like to point out. Number one, that's a separate issue, because if a lot of people don't have an ID, number one, it sounds like the Secretary of State is failing at her job, because it's the responsibility of the Secretary of State to ensure people have proper identification. So it sounds like she needs to be removed from office. That's point number one. Point number two, people need an ID to do more than vote. In order to be a meaningful participant in society, you have to have an ID. When you get a bank account, to get a job, to go in the federal building, there are so many things as an adult that you need an ID to do. So the answer, if there are lots of people, and I do know there is an issue with people with driver's license, but again, you don't need a driver's license to vote. You just need an ID. And an ID is like $10, so it's not expensive. And then even there's caveats in our legislation that allows for, if you are just that destitute and that poor, that you can get an ID for free. So just let's keep that in perspective. But like I said, the answer isn't to weaken our election system. The answer is to remedy the issue that's causing certain individuals to not have an ID. The other area of concern is that they're limiting who can scrutinize the election process. One of the things that we saw a lot of people demanded investigations and audits. And one of the problems we have is that they're trying to create a scenario that only the Secretary of State and authorized parties per the Secretary of State can conduct audits. Well, then that means that the person operating the elections is the only one who can investigate themselves. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. In any other area of life, there are third parties who are allowed to investigate something. And so now to put it in our Constitution, where only certain individuals, the Secretary of State and people that of their choosing, can actually audit elections. No, we the people should have a right to scrutinize the election process. That's why I started out my comments talking about our liberty, because this is a liberty issue. This is not about Republicans versus Democrats, liberals versus conservatives. That's not what this is about. This is a fundamental liberty issue that all Americans, irrespective of political affiliation, need to be united on. I have every right to scrutinize my government. And if we lose the ability to scrutinize our government and how they operate our elections, that's tyranny. We're asking for it. We're really asking for it. And that's what we need people to understand. Additionally, they want to have they want private money in elections. And, there's a lot of things going on I don't want to get into, because we have a pending legal action going on regarding illegal equipment being used in elections and being funded by private donations. We should not allow private money to fund our elections. Here's a couple of issues. Anytime your elected official communicates via their email, their government email, it is subject to FOIA requests. Every purchase is subject to FOIA requests. Everything the Secretary of State does under the context of her job as Secretary of State, not her private emails, of course, But her emails as Secretary of State, all of her function as Secretary of State is subject to FOIA request public scrutiny. However, when we utilize all these contractors, they are not subject to FOIA requests. Even worse, if we're allowing private individuals to fund elections, they are not subject to FOIA requests. So we will be allowing private individuals to fund elections, to fund unauthorized equipment, all kind of stuff that would be allowed for public scrutiny. But allowing private money in the elections opens the door for bribery. And one of the things that's so disingenuous when we push back on complaining about private money in elections, people will say, well, you know, the people who run our elections are honest people and they're hardworking people. Listen, I went to theology school. There are crooked pastors. There is not like one profession has more or less crooked people. There's corrupt cops. There's crooked teachers. There are crooked and dishonest people in every profession, because the problem is the profession is people. So we cannot treat our elections as though this is just some Super Bowl competition. We need to treat our elections commensurate with the reality of how they are necessary to securing them is necessary for our liberty. So we cannot allow private money in our elections. It just opens the door for corruption and fraud and all types of issues. Additionally, they want to allow 9 days of early in-person voting. That's also a problem. For one, we already have 40 days of absentee voting. So it makes no sense to have 9 days of early in-person voting. Then that leaves my ballot to be exposed. And they want to allow where multiple municipalities can vote in one location. Now, again, this is something I always like to say when we talk about elections. Elections are not a sexy topic. They're not, because they're extremely technical. And oftentimes when you're talking about it with the average person, people go to sleep. But here's part of the problem. Why are our elections so complicated for the average person to follow? It shouldn't be. It's just math. You're just adding and depositing values in columns. This person gets +1. He gets another vote. It's integers. It's simple. It's just simple math, just adding. But our elections have become overly complicated. And what Prop 2 is doing is going to make them even more complicated and even more difficult for most people to follow. Again, not because people are stupid. It's just that we are all experts or all skilled in our sphere of operation that we operate in every day. And if you're not in that sphere of operation of operating elections, then you're going to be a little confused. Just like if I stepped into any of you guys' sphere of operation, I'm going to be a little confused because I've never done it before. You put a car in front of me and say, fix the brakes. I'm going to look at you like you lost your mind. Not because I'm dumb, because that's just not my sphere of operation. And that's the issue. Our elections are too complicated. And then for them to allow multiple municipalities to vote in one location, untangling that is a nightmare. And so I was talking with a group of radio hosts about Prop 2. And they pointed out to me, they said, well, there was a video where some clerks came out in support of it. And I said, how many clerks? Guy says there's 3 clerks. It was an Odyssey. So basically, Odyssey is like warehouses several radio stations. I was talking with one of the guys from there. This is last week. And he said, three clerks. I said, there are 1,600 clerks statewide. So 3 of 1,600. The math. And that wasn't being condescending because he wasn't trying to do a gotcha. He was just pointing. We were just having a conversation. The point is that of 1,600 clerks statewide, we've only found about 3, and 1, I already know who it is. 3 who are in support of this, because the average clerk is terrified of this. Not only will it make running their election so difficult, it will make running elections so expensive. And the problem is that whenever the state issues a new directive, they turn to the local municipality to fund it or the county to fund it, but they're already cash strapped. And so that is not going to work. How are they going to fund it? Then they're going to look at the taxpayer, and then they're going to raise people property taxes. That's such an issue. That's such an issue. And so one of the things too is that when you talk to clerks, there are so many little issues when it comes to running elections that it's not that it's so complicated, but it's a lot of tedious work. There's so many little scenarios that occur that a clerk has to deal with to ensure that a person who legally can vote can, and a person who can't vote legally does not. And to add Prop 2 to the mix is going to add so much chaos and open the door for so much fraud in our election systems. And they want to encourage more drop boxes, and those things are rife with fraud. And here's the thing, we constitutionally have the right to vote absentee. And I, as your Secretary of State, will fight for that right. But the reality is that it is easier to cheat absentee than any other way. That's just a fact, because you are detached from your vote. And we have, I mean, for example, I don't know if I really don't, I don't want people to see my, if I may, I do want to point something out to people so folks are aware of why I'm saying what I'm saying. So if you go to a website called MVIC, it's the SOS website. Many of you have probably been to it before. Can I share my screen? Is that possible?
If it's not, I will make it possible.
Because I think this is important for people to see.
I believe as a co-host you can, but let me check the security settings, and if we need to change it, I will.
I think so. I can.
Okay, so according to this, it says participants can share screen, so you should be allowed to do that as a co-host.
Okay, let's see. Okay. All right. So it'll allow me to share this screen here. Okay. So as you can see with this screen here, this is the MVIC website. So this is the SOS website where you can see your voter information. Now, if you go down to this link here, it says, what are my other, so vote absentee, which again, you have the constitutional right to vote absentee. And it says right here, what are my other options for requesting an absentee ballot? If you click here in this link, it brings you to a screen here, and it gives you your other options. And see, notice it's several options, but they just have, you know, you can select one here, apply online. Now, if you select this option, applying online, you can request your absentee ballot online. So I'm not going to go through all of the process because it'll require me to submit some sensitive information, which obviously I'm not going to expose to the public. But of course, I'm a U.S. citizen, and I'm authorizing the Secretary of State to send my stored digital signature and hit continue. If I go through the rest of the steps here on the screen, if you look right here where it says, first you go through your qualifications, which I've already submitted, then I will set my voter information. Then I will select the application and the election I want to vote in. Then right here where it says mailing address, you see that where I'm circling my mouse? In that version, I can reroute my absentee ballot to any address I want. Now, that being said, if you had access to my information, you can reroute my absentee ballot to wherever you want. You can reroute anybody absentee ballot however you want. Now, how I found out about this is there was a guy in Wisconsin who rerouted several absentee ballots to his house, including the Speaker of the House in Wisconsin, Speaker Voss. He rerouted Speaker Voss's absentee ballot to his house and brought it to Speaker Voss and say, this is your absentee ballot. I rerouted it to my house. So that just shows you how weak our elections are, that I could literally go online and reroute your absentee ballot to my house. That's the problem. That's the problem. And so I'm gonna stop sharing screen now, but just to show you guys that we have the same, I mean, you know, I should be a pro at Zoom, at Zoom since I use it so much. But this is what we're talking about. This is the kind of things that are happening in our election system. This is happening in the state of Michigan. Our election system is so weak. There are so many failure points in our election system. It is so easy to commit election fraud in Michigan. It's so easy. And it doesn't have to involve the local clerk. Now, sometimes there is situations with the local clerk, like you look at Sharika Hawkins in Southfield. I mean, this clerk was indicted on felony election fraud, and she was still operating elections in Southfield, won re-election, and then just recently pled out of court and has resigned. I mean, so you have situations like this. But a lot of the stuff we're talking about, it doesn't involve the Secretary of State. It just involves anybody. And so, you know, that's why I'm running for Secretary of State, is, as I mentioned, to protect people's voting rights. Now, I never want people to think that the other responsibilities of the Secretary of State are not important to me. All of the responsibilities of the Secretary of State are important. My goal is to ensure that the Secretary of State is going to operate per the rule of law, period. Operate per the rule of law. And that your branch office operations are efficient, that we have both appointment and walk-in systems, that we ensure that we serve each community properly, that we expand our kiosk options. I would like to see all our kiosks accept cash. There's lots of things that I would like to do, but I know the purpose of this call was to talk about Prop 2 and to answer any questions that you have. So I know that, Matt is also going to be talking and you want to answer questions. So I'm going to stop here, but, I will say this, and so, because I know folks probably have questions. Why am I running? Because I love my country. And my background is education. I'm an instructor at Wayne County Community College. As I mentioned, I went to theology school. I have a master's in Christian apologetics. So this is not as though I was looking for a new career. A lot of the chaos that comes with running for public office, I don't like. I wish I didn't have to deal with. But you know what? Sometimes you have to put yourself out there for a greater cause. And when I look at how vulnerable our elections are and how many of us are not being told the truth about it, I'm required to act. So thank you so much for your time. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, first of all, I want to say when it comes to being a marksman, Rick and I can both help you with that. I appreciate you sharing your motivation to run, because I think that's what people are, they really feel inspired when you talk. Obviously, you're very knowledgeable about what the problems are. And I just want to thank you, because I know it's not easy. It's easy for people to look at someone as a politician and say, hey, that's a politician. No, that's a person who's putting their life on hold to go run for office and serve other people. And I really appreciate you doing that, because it's not easy. And you obviously have to really care a lot if you're going to put yourself in that position. So thank you very much. Rick, sir, do you have any questions? My co-host and good friend, Rick, is a warrior for personal rights. And I have so much respect for Rick, and he's helping us get the word out about this event. Rick, do you have any questions?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank her for being here and to make herself available to share this information. The information, I found it very timely, very informative. And one thing that I, as a firearms instructor, I know Ian will back me up. One of the great hallmarks of an effective communicator is to make things very simple and easy to understand. So I give you high marks for doing that. Just listening to some of the things that are going on with Prop 2, for me personally, it was a non-starter, but I think it's important that we engage in these activities and share with other people that information so that they can make a rational decision with regards to some of the proposals that they're asking us to vote on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think, we got some very attentive listeners that are giving me a lot of great feedback about how much they love hearing you talk. We do have a couple of people here that are trying to hack into the event. So I think I'm going to hold off on questions and maybe let Rick and I field a couple of questions that people are sending me. So, I just saw a commercial about this proposal 2 where it says it requires photo ID. But of course, when you read it, it says photo ID or a signature. And I don't think people understand, how do you match up a signature? I spend time working for a medical examiner for a large county. I won't say which, but sometimes when they were asking people to sign the forms that you had to fill out, they're like, put down something that folks can't read. You know what I mean? Because there's no way, in a practical way, that you're going to look at that signature and match that to somebody. But I think when people hear they're going to match the signatures, they don't really understand what that process is. Can you explain to people how a signature is not a replacement for a state issued photo ID?
Yeah, because, one of the things that's interesting last year, so our campaign has done over 350 events. And I was talking to a woman, she is an accountant. And she was telling me that, as an accountant, they have to go to continuing education class. A lot of professions, you have to go to continuing education class and you have to be recertified over a period of time. And she said that she had a class where the gentleman who was teaching the class, he went to jail for like bank fraud or something, where he was writing bad checks or something that caused, he was engaging in forgery. And he said to the class, I can write your signature better than you can. So forging a person's signature is so much easier than providing the fake ID. And my opponent was so interesting. My opponent, we actually have a video of her debating with Senator Jim Runstead, and she's claiming that signature verification is a better way to establish identity over picture ID. And she's all emotional and raising up in her chair saying that you can just get a fake ID. Now, I don't know from personal experience, but I'm just going to use a little logic here. I think that it's easier to forge a signature than to get a fake ID. Like, where do you even go to get a fake ID? Most people don't even know where to find that. And then secondly, a judge ruled against her in 2021 for last year for breaking the law when she told clerks to assume signatures are valid rather than not. And so she claims that signature verification is better than its picture ID, but then she's going to weaken the process she claims is most necessary to secure our elections. That doesn't even make sense. And so signature verification is never going to come close to picture ID. That's why, again, we need to protect people's constitutional right to vote absentee, but we do not need to sit and pretend that absentee is just as secure as in person, because it's not. I mean, when you go in person, you feed your ballot yourself. You know, somebody else you're depending absentee to do it for you. And part of what makes absent voting in person so secure is the picture ID portion, because I know that's that person. And then also, to your point, the other issue, and this goes into some of the other topics we covered, is my opponent refuses to remove dead people from the voter rolls. So there's a current lawsuit against her regarding her refusal to remove dead people from the voter rolls. This is ridiculous. Why is this such an issue? If somebody is dead, then this is not zombies. We don't have, what is this? When a person's dead, they're dead. That's it. There's no reason for them to be on the voter rolls. So why would she not be removing these people? This opens the door for fraud, whether you look at what I was referring to with the MVIC situation, how you can reroute somebody's absentee ballot, or because remember, that's not tied into death records. That's tied into the voter registration database. So the voter registration database does not know who's dead and who's alive. The voter registration database only knows the information that's been submitted to them. That's it. So the thing about it is that picture ID is so critical to know that this person standing before me is actually that person. And it just, logic is not going to allow us to, just evidence isn't going to allow us to conclude otherwise.
Can you also tell me why same day registration is such a problem? Because I don't think people understand that either. You need time to vet someone's registration to make sure that they're an authorized voter. If you just show up and you're not a registered voter and you're like, well, I'll just fill out this sheet and I'll vote. Once that vote goes in the pile, there's no way to associate that vote with that person who just filled out that piece of paper. And there's no way to prevent them from showing up at the polls and voting if they're not qualified for voting, because there's no time to vet their application. And I don't think people understand that process either.
Yeah, to your point, that was one of the big things that went wrong in 2018 when they legalized same-day voter registration. And as you pointed out, you have to have time to vet. The local clerk does not have the software in their office to vet somebody, because there's a difference between a person who's registering to vote and they already have a picture ID, they already have a state ID and driver's license. That's obviously a quicker process because they already have information in the driver's license file. The Secretary of State is responsible for reconciling the driver's license file in the QVF. So those are both databases that the SOS manage. But when you are registering to vote the same day, as you mentioned, there's no time for the local clerk to verify this information this person is submitting. Additionally, when you talk to local clerks, they find it to be absolute chaos. They say the same day voter registration is a nightmare and they hate it because it's so much, it's too many dynamics, it's too many variables. So it was important that we had a waiting period, that way we can ensure these people are actual Michigan residents, that these people are actually U.S. citizens, and they're actually at a residential address. You know, there's just so much. There's so much. We have to secure our elections. And one of the things to point out is that, you know, sometimes if you point out the problems in our elections and somebody will say something like, okay, well, we only had 10,000 same-day voter registrations. That didn't affect the outcome of this election and blah, blah, blah. We need to kill that conversation. That's not the point. We're not talking about this for a person or a party. We're talking about this as protecting our voting rights. Additionally, we vote on all types of elections. Look at your school board races. Your school board races are not going to be decided by 10,000 votes. Your school board race may come down to 5 votes. So every vote counts. Every vote is critical. Your local elections are going to come down to 10 votes, 15 votes. That stuff happens all the time. There's elections that are tied. So every vote is critical. So we need to remember that. And if I can posit this point too, this made me think, is that even the way we talk about elections needs to change. Notice we call this a midterm election. There's no such thing. We're being conditioned. We don't even realize it, that we're being conditioned to federalize. we're being conditioned to look to the federal government for everything, as though the presidential election is the most important and then everything else flows down from that. No, it's the reverse. That local election is most important, because I can knock on my mayor's door. I can't just walk up to the White House. So actually the local elections are what's most important, because those are the people who have more say-so over your everyday life. But while they're conditioning us to look federally, they're actually changing the laws to give more power to the federal government. But I don't want to get off topic. But every election matters. Your city election matters. Your statewide matter. Your county elections matter. The presidential election. There's not an election you vote on that does not matter. So I just thought I would point that out.
Well, I got a couple more questions here that I'm getting sent to me, but you tell me when your time is up. But you got the center stage today. Matt DePerno cannot make it. We're very sorry to hear that, because we support him too, and we want to give him a platform also. But we also understand things come up. That's why we're so appreciative that you're here, because we know you're busy too. But I have another question. Ask Kristina about her Benson Dirty Deeds series. That's what's being sent to me. And then I have one more question that got sent to me after that.
Yeah, so that's a series we put together because my opponent has done so many illegal things, and what's very frustrating for me. And, as I run for office, the things that are said about me, I don't take personal. Like, I was sitting, at the table, and I was talking to my dad. He's like, "Do you ever see bad commercials about yourself?" And like literally in that moment, a bad commercial about me came up, and I just shrugged my shoulders and like kept eating. I'm just like, whatever. The stuff, it just, you can't run for office and let this stuff bother you. But what I will say is that what does bother me is how the public gets deceived. The public gets so deceived. And, I was talking to a friend earlier who was telling me about something just so illegal my opponent is doing. And I just started stamping my feet, not because my feelings are hurt. I'm like, this is so illegal. It's so illegal. She just constantly breaks the law. And the thing about it is, my opponent was dean at Wayne State Law School. She was dean at Wayne State Law School. She knows what she's doing. She wrote a book about the Secretary of State's office. And so you have a lot of people in politics who become lawyers, not so they can serve, so they can know how to break the law. If you think about it, who are the best criminals? A lawyer and a cop. You can't get better than that. They know just how to break the law and get away with it. And that's what she tries to do. And the part that's frustrating for me is that the media will not report on her illegal activities. They will not. It's like this woman has broken the law for the fifth time. For the fifth time, a judge ruled against, not she has the broken law for the fifth time. Let me clarify. A judge has ruled against her for the fifth time. She keeps breaking the law. It sounds like she's a terrible lawyer. What kind of you and her entire crew inside the SOS office, they're all lawyers too. So the thing about it is, this woman keeps breaking the law. The media refuses to report it, because if you think about it, of the three of them, Whitmer, Benson, and Nessel, Benson is the most protected. Nessel is what I call the village drunk. She's just ridiculous. Whitmer is just such an egregious liar. I mean, I watched that debate the other night with her and Tudor, and Whitmer lied so much. I'm like, oh my God, this woman is just lying. She just has no conscience. Benson is protected. How often do they attack her? Think about it. Because that race is so critical, because that race has more power over our lives than even the other two. And I'm gonna tell you why, even Congress, everything, because the Secretary of State runs the elections. And so the Secretary of State is the one who decides. If they follow the law, we pick people in power. If the Secretary of State doesn't break the law, Secretary of State is picking who's in power. That's why that race is so important. And that's why Benson is so protected. She's so protected. They don't criticize Benson. They portray her like the innocent little neighborhood mom who just wants to do the right thing. This woman lied, claiming there were armed protesters in front of her home, even though the police debunked that. She lied and claimed Trump wanted her killed. She does all kind of stuff. She just lies. Then she lied again, claiming that there will be violence and disruption on election day. Talking about this election, no police report. Where's the police report? Where is who are these potential assailants? If I'm Secretary of State and people are going to try to threaten election workers and clerks, I'm not going to the news. I'm going to the police. I'm going to file a police report. And so that's why we created the Dirty Deeds series. It's because it's really bizarre how protected my opponent is. And it's not because I'm upset. It's like, why are they mean to me and they're not doing stuff to her? It's not childish. It's that this woman is a criminal. And for some bizarre reason, it's like this organized effort to cover up her criminal activity. And it's a threat to our republic. It's a threat to our freedom. If we are not picking who's in power, what are we doing? This is theatrics. That's why this race is so important. That's why we made the Dirty Deeds series. So, and we laid out each video has evidence of my opponent's illegal activities. That way people can see that I'm not just saying things. We provide all the proof. That way people can know that we're telling the truth. I mean, another thing she breaks the law, the Secretary of State oversees campaign finance. My opponent continuously collects funds well exceeding the legal limit. And she's supposed to oversee campaign finance. Where's the Detroit News? Where's Craig Mauger on that? They're not going to, they're going to keep protecting her, talking about how wonderful she is and how she defended democracy. By the way, we're a republic. We're not a democracy. So it's just, that's why we made the series. That's why we made the series. So hopefully Michigan will wake up and people won't put up with it anymore.
Where is that series out? Where's that series at? How is it that people can see it?
It's on our website. So KristinaKaramo.com. If you go to my website, KristinaKaramo.com, there's a white banner at the top that says Benson's Dirty Deeds, and people can watch that video series and share it with your friends. You know, as I said before, this race may be partisan, but this office is not. I don't care whether you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're Independent, Libertarian, Green Party, Tax-Free, Constitution Party. None of that matters to me. That's not my business. As Secretary of State, it's my job to protect your voting rights and ensure our elections are operated per the rule of law, period, end of story. And so people need to know what's going on, because I feel like our country has become so hyper-partisan to such an extent that even if a person is speaking things that are very reasonable, we ignore it because they're not part of our political party. That has got to stop. We have got to stop. Look at the evidence. Look at the facts. When you look at the evidence, what does it tell you? Like I displayed to people how you can reroute an absentee ballot. That is outrageous. Where is our local news media on that? And they'll say something like, well, you know, you have to have somebody's social security number and their driver's license number, as though people can't get that. What is identity theft? It's the whole reason why that's a problem, because people steal each other's identity. And then if she has dead people on the voter rolls, who's going to report stealing their identity? They're dead. But this absentee ballot can still be rerouted in their name. So I digress. That's why we made this series.
I tell you, I truly love your passion. Again, your command of the issues is admirable. And I tell you, to get me, it's with passion and with enthusiasm, and you have it in spades. And I truly appreciate you being here.
Thank you for y'all having me on the call, and thank you for you guys what you're doing, because I strongly believe that protecting our voting rights and protecting our Second Amendment rights are two elements. Those two elements are joined together as how we stay free. Those are, if we don't have those two rights, and they are equally important. Because you see what's going on in Canada. If we don't have those two rights, we will not be free, period. We have to have those. To me, those are the two most important rights we have.
I agree 100%. I've got more questions, but I know you're busy woman.
I'll take one more, and then I gotta.
All right,
yeah, I'll take one more. And then
okay, I got some good questions here. Oh my gosh, my buddy Joe, who's a deputy for Oakland County and a career police officer, recently retired, now works as a part-time deputy. He asked the question, ask her if she feels that changing the Constitution is an attempt to go socialist in this state and country. And then, like I said, I just had one other question after that, but we're good with just one.
Oh, okay. I can take both. That's fine. So to that point, I do believe these people, but I think these people are beyond socialists. I think they're Marxists. I think that they're actually what they are, because the socialists, they want redistribution of the wealth through more government say so over what we can, or like how much money we can have, or how much they want to increase taxes to make more equity, if you will. The reason why I call these people Marxists, because they want to control every aspect of your life. There's not an aspect of your life they don't want to control. Think about it. When socialist rights, now socialism is a stepping stone to communism. We do know that, but it's not the socialists who have pushed a lot of these edicts to just strip all of your freedoms away. So what we're seeing is a push to suppress our freedom of speech. We're seeing an attempt to suppress our Second Amendment rights. When I look at Dana Nessel, that we have on video, Dana Nessel stating that I was potentially engaging in a felony and could be criminally charged for stating that there's corruption in our election system. So that our current attorney general, which I said on Fox 2 Detroit that she needs to be impeached. And I didn't say that, I don't throw that around loosely, but she's abusing her power to want her political opponents to go to jail simply for speaking truth about government corruption. And so why, to the question directly, we can go over a litany of examples of how these people are looking to take away our constitutional rights. And they're doing that by creating war within the Constitution. That's the way it seems to me. Because when you look at the proposition, like even Prop 3, I know that's not what you guys are talking about, but that is wild. They're totally taking away parental rights. Totally taking away parental rights. And so I think that the citizen-led constitutional change has actually come to bite us in the butt. Because what's happening is that if you look at who's bankrolling these constitutional amendments, it's not Michiganders. Michiganders are not funding these constitutional amendments. These are millions and millions of dollars being pumped in from out of state. And I've even thought about that, like how there's a problem with our campaign finance, because I look at like my opponent, of her top 50 donors, her 70% are from outside of Michigan. 70% of her top 50 donors are from outside of Michigan. Michael Bloomberg just put $2 million into the Michigan Secretary of State's race. Now, what the hell does Michael Bloomberg have to do with the Michigan Secretary of State race? A billionaire out of New York is trying to influence who the Michigan Secretary of State is. That should concern every Michigander. So it's like Michigan has lost its voice in Michigan. Now we got some guy from New York telling Michigan what to do. But the problem is because you have a lot of people don't take the time to educate themselves, and they just look at commercials because commercials work. So commercials. You get just beat over the head with these commercials and mailers. I mean, I get all these horrible mailers sent out about me. They're from Washington, D.C. We saw a PAC, I vote, $2 million commercials, $2 million media buy against me. So now we know $4 million I know off the top of my head from PACs from out of state. That's not just me. The same go for Tudor. The same go for Matt. So that's a massive issue. So with that being said, they're trying to amend the Constitution using out-of-state money. And so that should concern us. And so now it's almost like it's going to create a war within the Constitution, because a lot of the things they're advocating for, especially in Prop 3, are actually somewhat unconstitutional, because you're taking away my parental rights. And so that gets into a whole nother thing. It gets into I know that's not the point of the call. We were supposed to talk about Proposition 2, but it really creates a war within the Constitution. And I think that these people are, directed to that question, utilizing in Michigan the ability to amend the Constitution to take our state down. And I don't think that these people are socialists. These people are neo-Marxists. That's what I strongly believe, based on not just the attack on our ability to create wealth and our freedom to create wealth, but also other changes they're looking to change the society to where we can and can't do. I mean, look what Whitmer did with the lockdowns. That's not socialism. That's worse. So that's my belief.
I thought I was fired up before this town hall. I'm way more fired up after hearing you talk. Okay, you give us one last question, but I will say this. It is my understanding, and I don't want to say anything that's false, but this really changed my opinion about that proposition about abortion. It's my understanding that children can go through gender reassignment surgery without the consent of their parents. If that doesn't keep people up at night, I don't know what does. Kids, I love kids. I teach kids. I dedicate my life to child safety. They're not old enough to decide when to brush their teeth and pick their meals. And it's our job as loving adults to guide them into becoming responsible and making sure they're safe in that process of becoming more mature and more wise and more informed. They can't make decisions like that when they're young, especially when they're being manipulated by forces that they're being taught to trust. And that's sad. But you said one more question, so I want to be very respectful of your time. You're so generous. And I really want to thank all the people that are here with us. You guys are doing your duty, because voting isn't just a right, it's a responsibility to be informed. And you guys are here educating yourself and making sure that you're informed. Please spread the word. It's not enough for us to vote. We got to get other people to vote, and we got to get people who weren't going to vote and get them to vote. so that we can protect our rights. The last question was, why can't we require that people return a copy of ID with the absentee ballot?
Yeah, if I could, I'm gonna answer that directly. So that was what Secure My Vote was about, the Secure My Vote Citizen Initiative that did pass. But the problem is there's concern that Prop 2 will nullify it potentially. But with the Secure My Vote Citizen Initiative that was passed, because that's different. So we can initiate citizen legislation, or you can initiate citizen constitutional changes. And so with the citizen legislation, it did require that you return a copy of your ID or the last 4 digits of your social security number, because that's also on your MasterCard file. When you vote on the qualified voter file, the last 4 digits of your social security number are included. So either A, you provide a copy of your ID, or the last 4 digits of your social security number. So that was a security measure that we supported. That way we can ensure that people are securely voting absentee. To your point regarding Prop 3, I think people need to understand how insidious it is. You're so correct, because the reason why we know, and this is one, let me step back. This is some of the deception of Whitmer and a lot of other people where they'll go, oh, that's not true. They're lying. It wasn't legalized abortion and transgender treatment for children. See, the devil's in the details. When you look at our system of government, all of our legal statute flows out of the Constitution. And so when the Constitution states that all individuals have a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, that word is individuals. That's how we know it legalizes children not only being able to get abortions, transgender treatment, and allow children to have sex, because that's why statutory rape exists. Statutory rape is different than, say, a rape in general, because statutory means it's not necessarily that the person was coerced overtly, is that because of their age, they couldn't consent. So it's going to abolish age of consent laws, because if all individuals, if you have just a moment, if I could read the language from it, if that's okay. Of course, not the whole bill. Not the whole bill. Yeah, not the whole bill, of course, but it's just a piece of language. And I think just kind of trying to arm people with information, because oftentimes when you point these things out, it's funny. One of the things when we run for office, you get frequently called a conspiracy theorist. You get called it all the time. Oh, you a conspiracy theorist, you a conspiracy theorist. Like, no, you're just telling the truth. And so, and also with my background in apologetics, it's very common for me to, because with apologetics, we always provide evidence. So what a Christian apologist is, we provide evidence for the Christian faith. We're like, I don't have to use the word debaters, but we go and provide evidence as to why we believe what we believe. So naturally in politics, I always like to provide evidence. Like when I say this is a problem, I always like to provide a scenario as to why I'm stating this. So when we say that it will legalize children be able to get abortions, transgender treatment, and sex, we're not just stating that, but you got to read the language. It says that every individual, and that's the problem, the individual piece. So it doesn't say every adult. It says every individual. It's not a child, an individual. And that's why, because if you notice, when court cases are tried, one of the things they go, is it legal? Then by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, what are they asking? Is it constitutional? So that's the issue. So it says every individual has a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, comma. So if what is reproductive freedom, it means what? I have the right to have sex. I have the right to get an abortion. I have the right to have transgender treatment. And it goes on and says, which entails the right to make and effectuate decisions about all matters. So a decision about all matters. It doesn't matter what the matter it is, relating to pregnancy, including but not limited to. And so it's including but not limited to. So they're going to list a series of things, but it's not limited to those things. It could be more. It says to prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraception, sterilization, so that's the transgender piece, abortion care, miscarriage management, and infertility care. And the bill gets even worse. I was just informed today by a friend that the bill also states, and this goes back to the SOS as well, because the Secretary of State is the person who writes that language that goes on your ballot explaining what it is. That's the Secretary of State. So of course, Jocelyn Benson's going to water it down because she supports this constitutional amendment. I was informed today that the ways this constitutional amendment will not prevent our legislatures from creating any laws pertaining to sex and sexual behavior, any. So if they can't create any laws, that necessarily means bestiality, because you can't create any laws pertaining to sex. And I had to clarify him again and again. He's like, I'm reading. It's crazy. Like, this stuff is wild. And they're lying. They just try to make it about abortion. It legalized abortion up till birth. And even if the baby survives, it gets into fetal viability. So if that, and that whole word has to be defined. When you look at the way courts do in legal language, fetal viability is determined by this medical professional who can decide what's fetal viability. And so there's a whole argument regarding when a child survives an abortion, what do we do? So some people think fetal viability, when does it begin? Because if a baby is a week old, can they really survive on their own? So is that fetus really viable? I mean, it is wild. This thing is crazy, and they lie to us, and they just say, oh, it's just about abortion. Oh, no, it's well beyond abortion. So even if you're a person who may be pro-choice, or you may be a person who say, well, I just believe in first trimester abortion or the first few weeks or before the heartbeat, this will also allow a medical professional can perform an abortion. So that means that any medical professional, so your dental hygienist can perform an abortion. There's a lot of safeguards around abortions as well. So even for the people on this call who may be pro-choice, there's things that you need to consider as well. Because even if you support abortion, shouldn't women have, I'm pro-life conception to natural death, but I'm just saying, and from a perspective of a person who's pro-choice, shouldn't we ensure that these abortion clinics are regulated, that they're safe? Shouldn't it be only licensed OBs doing it, not just some medical professional like a dental hygienist? Shouldn't we be checking for women who may have been sex trafficked victims? Because, the common sense, I'm sure a lot of women who are victims of sex trafficking get pregnant. I'm sure they do. I'm sure their pimps don't care about protection and contraception. And so screening for sex abuse victims is important, because now with this ease, you can have somebody running an abortion mill out their house that pimps take their victims to. And this Prop 3 will make it easier for women to be sexually exploited. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And then two, from what I recall, if a woman has some kind of complication from her abortion, I believe it will make it more difficult for her to sue. I know women who've had bits of the baby left behind in them. I know women who've been sterilized after an abortion. And so it's just, that whole Prop 3 thing, it needs to be shot to the ground so fast. It's awful. It's just awful. So that's all I have to say.
No, look, let me tell you, I not only appreciate the information, but I truly appreciate your passion. Just from a clear reading of the statute, I knew that I didn't support it, but I really like the level of detail that you gave in terms of the things that are possible and that were not explicitly precluded from being able to be done. A lot of times people say, well, you know what, you're just taking it way too far, but look, it's the law. It leaves everything completely wide open. It can be done. And so I have a whole level of appreciation of, and excuse me if you both think that I'm over exaggerating, but yeah, satanic, evil that comes to mind. But I get it. And just on its face.
Yeah, to your point, Rick, that's something people need to understand when reading the law. So when you read the law, like you just said, it's about what it doesn't say. So when it doesn't, if the law doesn't explicitly say this is illegal, then it's necessarily assumed legal. And that's what people need to understand. So this constitutional amendment is actually going forward to say you cannot make any law regarding sexual behavior. Any law. So it's like, well, wait a minute. That means that anything on the table. So animals, anything, like this is crazy. And then when it says every individual, how do we define individual? There's legal terms that are, there's the legal term and there's the term we use in everyday common tongue. And those are two totally different things. So when we think of every individual, we're thinking about adult. Legalese is different. And that's, the public is not aware of that. And these people prey on that. They prey on that.
Kristina, please tell us the biggest thing that we can do to help.
Make sure every person, irrespective of political affiliation, votes Kristina Karamo for Secretary of State. Right now, of course, financial contributions help. Absolutely.
Tell us where to send the money.
KristinaKaramo.com. So go to our website, spelled just like my name, KristinaKaramo.com. You can submit a contribution there. We would greatly appreciate your help. As I mentioned, there are millions of dollars being flooded into Michigan. Also, getting a yard sign, a T-shirt. Connect with somebody from your county to get a yard sign and T-shirt. We have so many yard signs and T-shirts. Put on your T-shirt, put out a yard sign, and make sure you reach out to your friends who, like I said, who may not be a Republican, and understand that I don't care what your party is. This election is so critical. I need you to vote for me because we got to clean up our election system. Our voting rights are so critical, and they are absolutely under attack, and not in the ways being told to us. Not from the people who want it more secure and honest. Because when we talk about securing our elections, it's not about limiting people's ability to vote. It's just ensuring that that process is secure when you do vote. That's what I'm working to do.
And share this
Amazing
video,
and
please.
awesome. You have bestowed upon us, the listening audience, a wealth of information. You've even deepened my resolve to vote no on these 3 proposals that are out here. But I feel even more educated on the process, and I'm going to be doing everything that I can personally to make sure that people know that you're running and that you need to be supported, because the only word I keep coming up with is evil and satanic. Yeah.
Guys, please share this video. Okay, we're gonna post this video. Please share. People have to hear her talk. They have to understand the issues. This is really critical. Again, it's people thinking one thing, but they're actually voting for the exact opposite of what they want. We've got to be informed. Voting isn't just a right; it's a responsibility. Everybody who's here, thank you so much for giving us your time and taking that step to be informed. Rick, thank you so much for helping get the word out about this event. You're such a warrior for people's rights. I have so
Hey,
much.
man, look, but right back at you. You know, we go way back, man, way back. But I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this process. And Kristina, if there's something that I can do to help you, don't at all hesitate to reach out and ask. If I can, you have my full support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless, guys. Thank you.
That goes for both of us. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for taking the chance to educate us. You have a great night and best of luck. And you got my vote. You got our vote. We're all going to be out there to push it and help you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care and have an awesome evening.